So, welcome to the Offsite Dirt Network. We are connecting to a global leader in the UK, Simon with Dodd Modular. Hi, Simon. How are you today?
Hi there, good afternoon.
I'm so glad you're here. And I call you a global leader because you really, truly, with Dodd Modular, are effectively working in all different types of markets around the world. But first and foremost, I'd love for you to just give us an overview about Dodd and Dodd Modular and how it began.
Thank you, Audrey. Dodd basically began in 1987, which is coming up to nearly 40 years in business, and we started off doing basically bespoke material handling devices into the automotive industry in the UK. And we did very well in that, conveyors and handling devices, and we tended to get involved in handling problems that couldn't be solved by normal means. So that led us into very much a bespoke sort of engineering solution to the customer problem. And then around 2010, we got involved in the modular market, where we got involved with a UK customer who at that time was making volumetric LGS product for student accommodation, and we literally got uh, best way to describe it would we reviewed and changed a factory to get it to work for this particular client. And by doing that, that gave us a huge insight into the requirements for framing and also the requirements for volumetric build. And then from there, we then worked with some of the larger UK modular manufacturers over the last sort of 6 to 7 years. Some being full factory fit outs on LGS and timber, and that included basic framing systems, conveyor systems for the modules on finishing lines, and everything else in between. And then more latterly, we've basically expanded globally in the space of the last 3 to 4 years, such that today 80 to 90% of our business is actually export. And that export is being driven by, one, the North American market, and two, the Middle East. And that's really where we see our growth opportunities at the moment.
So let's talk a little bit about innovation. What gaps in today's modular market inspire your latest product innovations, and how do you see solving challenges for developers and factory operators over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think when we talk about gaps in factory capabilities, there are a lot of gaps, and we see that very frequently. And what that's led us to do is to try and offer an overall factory solution, but then very much focusing on a framing systems, and that would be the actual framing of the panels right the way through to the sheathing and the painting and the storage, and then also different options on actually the finishing lines through from rail systems through to integrated conveyor systems, the type that you generally see in automotive. And then when we talk about innovation, we developed at the beginning of this year a number of screw bridge options, and this is on the framing system, because what we actually saw was that there was almost a gap in the market, in the fact that there was a manual. Everybody has manual tables for building frames, and then at the higher end there was robotic applications entering the market. Evidently, the robotic applications are hugely expensive, so we felt there was a halfway house, if you like, that we could develop a semi-automated screw bridge machine for actually panelizing units, and that launched at the beginning of this year. And so far, we're up into the 20s on the number of units that we've actually sold. So we very much see it as being an opportunity, and the cost effectiveness of it. We're literally looking at a return on investment in less than 12 months, which we feel is almost a no-brainer to anybody out there.
Yeah.
When we talk about the factory owners and what they perhaps need to be thinking about over the next 3 to 5 years, we're very much trying to sort of get across the message that the plan for integration and productivity improvements has got to be in line with the plan for the growth of the business. because ultimately any equipment that people want to be looking at, one, you've got to be able to afford to buy it at day one, but two, you've got to see the benefit as it runs over that 3 to 5 years. So ultimately, the 3 to 5 year plan for those factory owners should incorporate a level of productivity improvement because that's ultimately going to hit their bottom line.
I love your approach and the way that you look through the longevity of the business and the goals, Simon. I was lucky enough to see you speak a couple of years ago at the World of Modular, and it was very nice to see that you are not looking to sell equipment. You're looking to solve issues and also to
Exactly.
gain productivity. And with that, I also like the sense of the plan and looking at the overall factory. How do you start looking at those kind of questions? Like what in your mind are like maybe three key things that a factory owner should already be thinking and planning for in the next couple of years?
I think well, the one thing that we find is that every factory does things differently. So, but that for us is the challenge because ultimately equipment has to be adapted for a particular client in a particular situation. But I think one of the things that we do find is production is the same no matter what you're making. You know, at the end of the day, you have processes, you have people, you have materials, and the first base for us is that the factory operations have got to understand those processes and understand one where their bottlenecks are, two, where they're incurring cost, whether that be additional labor, whether that be additional waste. And it's those areas where there are inefficiency and identifying those inefficiencies, which is something we bring to the party to actually say, well, okay, that particular operation you're currently taking, 8 hours to do using four guys. Can we look at doing it in half the time with half the people? And what are the options to do that? And again, every client has a different view of that. But the number one priority for every factory and every factory owner is how can we continually improve our processes and productivity? And if you're not doing that, you're gonna slowly die, I'm afraid.
I agree with you. And I think all of those are really good points for us to start looking at the factory flow, the operations, and the cost savings. I really like the screw bridge gun because I feel like that bridge that you have created, it has more accuracy. You're utilizing less screws. You have, because we were just talking with a client about that. Here he is. He's in his factory. He's got three different guys, four different guys, putting in the product and utilizing the screws in the product type. And what was happening is they're just screws are flying around, right? There's buckets and buckets of screws, and you come up with this process of a solution. And I think the other thing that I like about it is you're also customizing the product for the factory owner, right? These aren't just a machine that everybody can buy. Like you really think through, you engineer it, and you really plan for how it's going to be most effective in their factory.
Yeah, and we have to do that because no one company makes the same product in this industry. So by default, you have to adapt the standard equipment to suit. And I think the other thing that kind of comes across is, particularly with those screw bridges, that we build them to be robust. They're not going to break. And secondly, they're easy to maintain. All right. And the maintenance of that particular equipment and the running of that particular equipment, it needs relatively little skill and relatively little resource. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is to give the client a low cost, semi-automated solution that will allow them to improve their productivity. But the last thing we want to do is put a mill around their neck that it actually weighs them down in the fact that they've got to be continually maintaining and there's continual call outs. When we put equipment in, we very rarely go back.
And I love the idea that we were talking, you can use different types of screw
Yep.
guns, right? It's what
Absolutely.
does the customer feel most, what products are they using, and then adapting that
Yeah.
product into this vehicle for them,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, yeah, the first questions are what screws are you using or do you want to use? What is your preferred gun type? and then we would then look to adapt those into the machinery. And the only criterion you really need is you need to be able to put the screws on tapes to feed the guns. But
Brilliant.
that's the only real thing that you need to do. But the good thing about that is that evidently, factories will have preferred uses of particular equipment already. So then it makes the use of that a lot easier because the operators are used to using that type of equipment.
Right. I love that it's adaptation to what they're already using, making the efficiencies and the productivity more fluid, right? More flow within that factory. And also, you're not spending like 3 months trying to train on a program because you've got this new equipment that has this new software that's supposed to talk to this new platform. Like
No,
all of that takes a lot of time and change management, right?
there's absolutely none of that. I mean, an installation on a screw bridge takes about 4 or 5 hours tops, and the client will be running it same day.
So I want to
Same
talk
day.
about two quick other points in the factory. I'd love to talk about your wall system, and then I also want to talk about your conveyor system. Can you just briefly talk through those two products?
Yeah, we have a wall handling system, which in effect is and again, each factory being different would have a different requirement. But in effect, what it is an overhead aluminium rail system that in effect allows you to take a wall from your framing line and deliver it to the box line or to a storage area or to a window fitting or whatever. And the premise of it is if we can get the product off the floor and easily movable, you are going to save time with guys on forklift trucks. You're going to save time, literally, on storage and all those other means. And again, we've installed one in a factory in Pennsylvania. Had very good feedback from it. But again, that system, you can have them so that the conveyor is actually automated. But in that particular instance, the client just wanted to push the walls around the factory, which worked well for them. So again, it doesn't necessarily always have to be something that's automated. It can be manual, but effective because it's smart. So that's that system.
I love that system. And then also, I love that we've talked about having the conveyors in the ground so that the actual modules can move down the factory line while they're also getting built. Can you
Yeah.
explain that system a little bit for our audience?
Yeah. I mean, we basically get involved in any number of ways of creating a flow line for modular housing. Because one of the things we truly believe in is if you build statically, that works if you're doing very low volume. But as soon as you start to increase your volumes, you've got to create a production line. And once you create a production line, the ideal way to do that is to move your modules through the factory. If you're able. And once you're able to move them, there are a number of different ways. We have inline low friction rail systems, which are rails that sit into the floor, and your modules sit on bogies and are then pushed through. And interestingly enough, one guy could push a 30,000 pound module on his own on those sort of systems. So they are quite interesting. And then on the conveyor side, again, there are different adaptations. So there's a low cost option where you look at a roller conveyor system that literally just runs from one particular fitting station to the next, and that's just done by push buttons. And then at the top end, we do basically an integrated plastic belt system, which is the one you're referring to, which you can either sink into the floor on a slight platform. And the benefit of that system is it's a little bit like how they manufacture cars, in the fact that the modules are continually moving. But they're moving so slowly that you can't physically see it. And then obviously the upside for that is that operators that can then get in and out of the modules as they need to then do that assembly as the product flows down to the end of the production line. And the one key benefit for the factory manager and the factory owner is that the speed of the line is dictated by the conveyor, not by the production.
Amazing. So I love that we have touched on all of these great innovations and precision engineering that Dodd Modular has provided. Also, just for those that are listening, you can also go to his YouTube channel to actually see the products that we have just discussed today. Simon, with closing, what's your plan for the next, 3 to 5 years? How do you see Dodd Modular growing and expanding?
Well, we see particularly the North American market being a big opportunity for us, but an opportunity where we're looking for clients who want to come on the journey, or we want to join them on their journey. Might be the better way of putting it. Because it's not just about equipment; it's about how we can add value to their process and their system, and that's the thing that I would really strongly say sets us apart. That we're able to understand the production environment, not just it's a supply of equipment. So we very much see North America as being a very good market for us, a good opportunity.
Beautifully well said. And that's the dirt on Offsite Dirt. Make sure to like us, share us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.